Listings for all television and major satellite.
This is the Advanced Passenger Train, or APT. In 1981, this high-speed tilting train was poised to revolutionise railway travel. But the British government lost faith in their pioneering engineers, and in 1986, the APT was abandoned. In the 1800s, British railway pioneers were national heroes. From this crumbling factory in Newcastle, George and Robert Stephenson built the machines that changed the world. Soon these rusting winches will be buffed up and the site restored with lottery money. Gambling on leisure and heritage is now a safer bet than on iron and steel. But at one time in these drawing offices, Robert Stephenson designed the rocket and sent the Industrial Revolution into orbit.
This is locomotion. This is what George Stephenson built 4 years before the rocket in 1825. So this isn't the rocket, and rocket wasn't the first. This is a beam engine going for a walk. In fact, it's two little beam engines. And driving this is like driving a colliery winding engine. The only awkward bit is you've got to do two at once.
Before George Stephenson became known as the father of the railways, he learnt his trade by getting his hands dirty. Working as an engineer in the coalfields of northeast England, he was surrounded by winding engines which pumped out waterlogged pits. By miniaturising cylinders like this and fixing them on small high-pressure boilers, he created a simple piece of locomotive machinery. But Stephenson's real flair was for spotting other people's good ideas.
Stephenson was not that original. What he did best was draw together the ideas from other people. There's Murray's slide valve, not Stephenson's. You know. Here's a boiler. This is a Trevithick boiler. Fremantle valve gear, not Stephenson. It goes on and on. This is not pure Stephenson genius.
Stephenson's spectacular machine was financed by a group of local coal barons, but they weren't interested in providing passengers with pleasant-day returns. The locomotive was developed to replace the horse and shift their coal.
Nearly all the early experiments were concerned with industrial movement of goods, basically coal. They had a lot of coal, it was very heavy, it had to be moved, and an engine could do the job. This was a great roaring, raging beast. Cinders coming out from the chimney, rattling over these very short lengths of track, and they made a huge impression.
Before fire-spitting machines took to the rails, man's greatest invention, the wheel, had been getting stuck in primordial sludge for years. Just south of Newcastle, industrial archaeologists have discovered a relic from the very birth of railways, a wooden wagonway. For centuries, horse-drawn wagons took coal from the pits to major rivers in the northeast. From there, it was shipped down south and abroad. Until now, not much was known about the technology of early rail. Incredibly, this 18th century wagonway has many of the features of its modern-day counterpart. The roughly hewn oak tracks with a gauge of 4'2" are fitted to even more basic sleepers. As today, guide rails are used to prevent derailment, but the most remarkable feature are the crude points. No moving parts here. Early railway workers had to heave the wagons from track to track. By the early 1800s, metal was already beginning to replace the wooden wagonway, but the first iron rail stopped some engines in their tracks.
One of the great disadvantages of the early locomotives was they tended to break the track. The track was cast iron in short sections, the locomotives were unsprung, and they would shatter the cast iron rails quite easily. There was a natural conundrum that you really wanted the weight of the engine because that could pull more weight itself. It had adhesion. However, too much weight then broke the track. And it took really a lot of experiments and a lot of time to get over that natural problem.
As track developed, George Stephenson's son Robert was making his own improvements. In 1829, he created a truly revolutionary engine, the Rocket, and blasted locomotive design into the modern age. For the first time, slanting pistons replaced vertical cylinders, giving a smoother, faster ride. The Rocket set a world land speed record of 29 miles an hour, but such breathtaking velocity had a price.
At the opening of the Liverpool-Manchester, one of the great supporters of that railway and railways in general has been Mr. Huskisson, an MP, and he had a sad accident where he stepped in front of a train. Rocket did remarkably. They put him on it and rushed him to more or less a local hospital. He died, unfortunately, and that was something of a setback, but in a way it proved the effectiveness of the railway train to get him there so quickly.
In the same year Robert's flashy Rocket made its debut, his old dad designed a railway with much more basic routes. Boiling water still had its place, and not just for making tea. Inexpensive steam winding engines hauled coal wagons up hills locos couldn't climb. But if the stationary engines were cheap, gravity cost nothing. The loaded wagons freewheeled down the other side, their weight winding up the empties on a pulley system. This self-acting incline could move coal for miles.
The coal came from Blackfell, up to Blackenshill, and then away from Blackenshill, straight down to the Jarrow, ships. 9 or 10 mile easy, 9 or 10 mile. Self-acting inclines until it got down to the bottom of the Springwell Bank, and the locos took them straight away from there down to Jarrow Steeps. The man that designed this, he must have been a very clever man. And I think it would be George Stephenson, for the simple reason it was clockwork and very cheap concern, and they could never make improvements on it. They got the coal through for a song, for coppers. In fact, one set in the morning paid for everyone's wage. It was about 200 men on this railway, everybody's wage. One set through.
The Bowes Railway saw few changes in its long history. After the National Coal Board took over in the 1940s, the steam-powered engines were gradually replaced by electric motors. But what never changed was the danger of working next to spinning wheels and free-rolling trucks. Tommy Latch is as fighting fit now as when he dodged coal trucks for a living.
I was a wagon examiner. Every truck before it come onto the inclines I examined, looking, checking, wheels, frames, drawbars, everything. So if it was bad, I condemned it. And I could be in front of a coroner any bloody day. I could be in front of a coroner for letting a faulty truck go, and I wouldn't let it go. It was more than my job was worth. So therefore, I used to create safety. What's the brakes like here? What's the brakes like? All right, half a whirl. Get on and do the bugger. Fetch them up, release, shove it up, send it down, and all the rest of it. Great, great performance. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. No bother, no bother. Your bugger used to kick me height for a lad, you know. Kick me height just for a bit of fun. And you walk like a dog underneath, you know. Underneath the trucks, get under there, and then come back. Do the splits and all sorts them days. You boys, when I was young, oh, I can just do it. Just do it now. used to check all them for flaws and defects. And the gable there. Sometimes them used to jump through there. If you were spread, them buggers could jump off and over the top and set away. You bugger. I had a hell of a job, I can tell you, but I enjoyed it. Aye, happy days, happy days.
On the 14th of October 1974, the Bowes Railway was closed for good after 148 years.
They wouldn't do it now, Bob. They wouldn't do it now with the lads.
I don't think they would.
No, I don't think so, no. They weren't so daft. No, not so daft now.
I wanted to see if it was necessary then, it was a job.
No, it was a job. It's your bread and butter. Aye, but we had some happy days, hadn't we?
Well, we had some rough days.
Aye, some rough days.
Good men worked on the railway. Oh, aye. Good walkers. All good walkers, yes. Oh, it used to be good. Aye.
Quello che vuole, basta che fili. Basta che firmi.
And it's all worked out beautifully for Ginola.
When you're looking for an epic night out, look for this sign. Because where you looked for access, now you'll find MasterCard.
As the UK's #1, Lun Poly give more discounts on more holidays than any other travel agent. Lun Poly, a better way to get away.
New Centrum. Nothing has more vitamins and minerals at precisely 100% ECRDA. Centrum, complete from A to zinc.
There is a powerful remedy for the 4 main symptoms of flu that is now also available as a hot drink. Benylin 4 Flu has the power to reduce a fever, relieve aches and pains, soothe coughing, combat congestion, and so aid restful sleep. Available without prescription. New Benylin 4 Flu hot drink for powerful flu relief.
Did you hear about the trouble on the first floor?
Morrison's out.
You sure?
He's retiring.
I never thought he'd retire.
Neither did he.
There may be trouble ahead, but while there's moonlight and music and love and romance, let's face the music and dance. Let's face the music and dance.
You needn't worry if your life changes. Allied Dunbar financial plans adapt to help you cope with the unexpected. Allied Dunbar, for the life you don't yet know.
Throughout January, the Daily Telegraph is offering our readers great travel deals every day. Up to 50% off selected Page and Moy holidays. Over 1,000 trips to be won. And 50% off Air UK flights. Follow our travel advice to the letter, and we'll help you escape. Only in Britain's biggest selling quality daily. The Daily Telegraph. The A to Z of travel.
At the end of the last century, designers didn't make daily maintenance easy for the long-suffering engine drivers. As the demand for more efficient engines grew, Robert Stephenson pushed steam technology to the limit. And although Robert died in 1859, his pioneering designs lived on.
The A5 was built in 1883 for the Concert Iron Company. There were a lot of very tight curves at Concert, so it needed to be a very short wheelbase. The overall length of the locomotive is 29 feet, and the wheelbase is only 10'9". All of the wheels are in front of the firebox, which gives this long overhang at the back. Unfortunately, with the short wheelbase and the long overhang, it gives a very rough ride in the cab. The back end sways back and forward like this when you're going round curves.
The A5's oiling points were not designed for the faint-hearted.
To oil this engine up, you have to get between the frames underneath the boiler. Now, there's not a great deal of room there. The oiling is very difficult. To get into the frames, you've either got to get into a pit and reach right up, or you've got to lie along the footplate, get yourself jammed between the footplate and the boiler, and then stretch in and get very long arms to get in with the oil. The designers weren't particularly keen on drivers' comforts.
Oh well, it was probably oily enough. Though some aspects of the A5 were a pain, others were pure pleasure.
George Stephenson, he had the idea that you just needed one large tube through the boiler to heat the water up. This is evident in locomotion. Robert Stephenson, his idea was to have a lot of smaller tubes through the boiler, make them as long as possible, and get a lot of heating surface. Now, this locomotive, this one has 198 small tubes in, so you can imagine the amount of heating surface you can get off that as compared with only one tube in. It's quite a pioneering design, this one, in that these long tubes allowed it to have a pressure of 140 pounds per square inch for steam, which made it a very powerful locomotive, ideally suited for moving the heavy trains up at Concert. Industrial locomotives were designed mainly for one-man operation. The design is quite a classic, really, but this one was built in 1883, yet the Concert Iron Company still in 1941 sent the drawings for this locomotive to Robert Stephenson and Hawthorne's of Newcastle and had further locomotives built to exactly the same design.
By the start of the 20th century, British coal trains were straining under 230 million tonnes of coal a year.
What working on the mainland was that you were picking a full load of about 30 trucks, maybe 300 or 400 tonne, and taking it down to Sunderland, to the docks, and then bring empties back to the pits. The same with South Dock. When we went to South Dock, which is another side north, and we used to do just the same.
But something was missing from northeast coal engines: power. Featuring massive cylinders and weighing 61 tonnes, the first Lambton tank was introduced in 1904. With as much capacity for onboard coal and water as engines with a tender, Robert Stephenson and Co. were onto a winner. It doesn't take long for Andrew Robertson and Harry Hargrave to relight their memories of working these mainline monsters.
All right there, Harry.
All right, away. Whistle and go.
All right, the board's off.
Handbrakes off.
There we go. This is the steam brake. We release it to go forward. We have the reversing handle here in the forward position. This is the regulator, and we give it a little gentle pull. And now we're off. We have to keep an eye on the gauge glasses. The fireman watches them to say that the level of water is all right. And the steam.
Fireman's job to watch the steam, keep the boiler full. This is the ejector. Put the water in the boiler. I've filled the boiler up. Then it's a matter of putting coal on and keeping the steam up. Watch your way going there.
A driver using too much steam was never popular with the man shoveling coal.
You see, he's got it in full gear there. Now you can leave it in full gear, steam on, and he's using the steam like I didn't know what. And you're lashing the coal on. But if he notches it up, which he should do, pulls it back into... That's notching up. And that's cutting the steam off earlier, so you're not using as much steam. It's allowing the steam to expand in the cylinders earlier, like. And you're not using the steam then, of course. The fireman had a good job then.
We got so used to them that we knew what engine it was by the sound. Some of them engine whistles used to have a very low tone, and you could tell which one. Number 20, for instance, was one of those. Steam engines was much more alive to us.
Steam engines had a character about them. You could get the same type of engine, you got to work it different, fire it different, had a character, and you used to talk to you when you were working them, really. You know, as they were speeding along the rails there.
Steam was a powerful thing, and we thought maybe diesels wouldn't be so powerful. A lot of the chaps didn't want the diesels when they came.
In the 20s, a lot of people decided that steam was a little bit obsolete and dirty, and they decided that diesel would be the answer.
George Cowell helped build some of Britain's first diesel electrics in 1933.
My generation were the last of the Victorians in the sense of heavy engineering. When I started work as an apprentice, you had to learn very, very quickly. Consequently, a 20-year-old had built this loco. Nobody had ever built like it before. We were like George or Robert Stephenson. We had nobody to follow. And some of the things you used to get up to build some of these locos were really astronomical and quite dangerous at times. Eventually we got into a rhythm and a way of doing it, but I was still a steam man at heart. It was a very, very successful little loco. There were various types of them made over the years. Some for India, some with a 5'6" gauge, some with 3'6" gauge. They were a little bit before that time because coal was so cheap and the people wouldn't change over from the steam to the diesel, even though they were cheaper to operate. Of the 6 people, still 2 have survived. And it makes me feel very old and very, very proud of being associated with them.
With the advent of diesel, Britain's industrial revolution came full circle. In the greatest railway irony of all, coal, the inspiration for Britain's loco pioneers last century, was still so plentiful by the 1950s that the need for progress to modern fuels was ignored. Steam engineers fought stubbornly for an outmoded power.
It was quite a severe battle, and it was a battle that was being lost because diesels were taking over. After all, you get under a diesel locomotive, you can switch on and go. With a steam locomotive, this morning we've spent 2.5 hours preparing this one before it can go and do any work. In the previous century, we had the locomotive as a new device which was taking over from the horse. Here we've got the last stage in the development of the locomotive in an industrial sense, and this one was trying to stop the ingress of diesel and electric traction.
This engine was one of 5 built for the Steel Company of Wales. But Britain's cutting-edge steam engines were seen as a bit of a joke.
This is a Bagnall locomotive that was built to compete with the diesel market, and it was actually built in 1950. and it incorporates a lot of features like this Walschaerts valve gear that we find more in mainline steam locomotives, not in industrial locomotives. It also has things like roller bearings, which are quite unusual in industrial locomotives, which gives this engine a nice smooth movement.
There was no clambering about with dirty oil cans on the Bagnall. With a delicate top-up of the oil feeder, it was ready to go.
The self-oiling system pumps oil from the lubricator around the locomotive to the cylinders and the glands and just keeps the moving parts well lubricated through the action of the locomotive itself.
In the decade Russian rocket scientists prepared to blast animals into space, engineers from Stafford were still burning coal and boiling water. Stuck in a Victorian time warp, but still desperate to keep pace with the times, the Bagnall was stuffed with innovative knickknacks. Never again would a driver have to rake out his firebox after a long day. But mod cons like this just proved the absurdity of trying to compete with 20th century machines. The spark had left Britain's locomotive trade, and the Industrial Revolution had burnt itself out.
This was a hotbed of the Industrial Revolution. We were the pioneers. We were the people who invented the steam locomotive. We were the people who were producing steam locomotives, and the whole world was coming to us. By 1950, the whole thing had turned round. We were actually competing in the wrong area, looking at steam locomotives and trying to develop them further, when the development was with diesel-electric locomotives and electric locomotives. This then was the end of the line for industrial steam.
In 1907, Britain manufactured 1,800 locos. Today, we make only a handful. But the legacy left by the pioneers of the North East is huge. What started as a coal-carrying pump on wheels triggered a revolution that shook the world.
Commuter trains and the change from steam to electricity is the focus next week. That's at the same time of 8:30 here on 4.